this week's best MMA bets back in your life. Welcome to the 2025 debut. We're talking UFC Vegas 101. I'm going to give you guys my lock of the week, most confident picks in the card. We'll talk my favorite underdogs, Degen Props of the night, and then finish it out with the parlays. So make sure you guys smash the likes. If you're new, subscribe. Turn the post notifications on and make sure you share the video too. I'm really excited to get the ball rolling in 2025, and I had to bring a lock to get excited about. We're not doing a parlay lock this week. It's a single fighter lock, and it's an underdog too. So without further ado, the lock of the week.
Here is Trey Ogden!
Trey Ogden, lock of the week for UFC Vegas 101. I feel like the matchup is pretty good for him. He has a better fight IQ than Thiago Moisés. His boxing skills are pretty solid. He's sound defensively. He works a nice jab. He picks his shots well, and he's a very patient and calm fighter. On top of a pretty decent striking arsenal, the grappling skills are really impressive. Dominant wrestling game. Now, not Khabib Nurmagomedov, Islam Makhachev, Dagestan dominant, but at the unranked level of the lightweight division, definitely one of the better offensive wrestlers and control-based grapplers. I look at Thiago Moisés, his opponent, and I've seen somebody consistently not live up to any expectation that was, initially put there from the Brazilian grappler. He does have good jiu-jitsu, but it's not exceptional jiu-jitsu. He doesn't have like this crafty, crazy submission game. He's kind of an MMA generalist whose base is jiu-jitsu. When I look at the striking of Thiago Moisés, I see average Brazilian-style Muay Thai, not super quick in the pocket, not devastating with any shots, decent looping punches. He's really not exceptional in any area. And to be a favorite against Trey Ogden, I started scratching my head. I was like, Trey Ogden's got the momentum. He's definitely got the upside. He's a plus 155 underdog. I don't think Trey Ogden should be a dog in this fight. At the least, even money fight here. Ogden's on a nice win streak. Technically, it's 2 in a row, but really it should be 3 in a row. Just a bad referee stoppage on the Nicholas Mota fight. Thiago Moisés on the other side, yeah, he's younger at 29, but, trading wins and losses in his last 4 wins recently are Mitch Ramirez, who's debuting on short notice and not super high level, Melquizio Costa, who's a featherweight, and Christos Giagos, who was pretty much washed. Sure, the losses are not bad. Ludovic Kline's decent. He's explosive with his striking, but he beat the brakes off of Thiago Moisés. And do you remember his last fight? Ludovic Kline, Roosevelt Roberts? It was a competitive fight with Roberts, and he absolutely rocked Thiago Moisés early in that fight. And I'm thinking Thiago Moisés going to take out a crafty vet like Trey Ogden with a pretty high fight IQ. Not feeling it. I think Trey Ogden wins this thing. I like him a lot as an underdog lock. I like a matchup where I see somebody with a good fight IQ, definitely heart too. Trey Ogden's not a guy that's going to give up on himself, turtle up, and get TKO'd. He's very hard to finish. Thiago Moisés, for my liking, doesn't pose a substantial submission threat. Ogden on the regional scene some years ago has been tapped before, but Thiago Moisés to me is not exceptional with his jiu-jitsu. He's good at jiu-jitsu. He's got a good rear naked choke. He beat up Mitch Ramirez ripping at the legs, but Trey Ogden's not heavy-footed like that. Trey Ogden's pretty mobile. Trey Ogden's crafty. Trey Ogden's an MMA coach too. He has a good mind for the game, and I think he can plop down Thiago Moisés. This is like a similar level. Moisés younger at 29, but we've seen him, like I said, trade wins and losses. We got Trey Ogden on a good win streak. Ogden also beat Daniel Zellhuber at one point. I feel like he's shown that he can fight well in every area of the game. And I think a competitive decision against Thiago Moisés is a pretty likely outcome for this fight. So the pick is Trey Ogden. Down the center is the official call for the lock. I think the money line at plus money is the best way to go. But listen, you can always chase something better. Let me pop out the Zin. Shout out to the Zins. First shout out of 2025. Ogden by decision is also plus 250. I think he probably beats Moisés in a competitive decision. I see competitive moments throughout a good amount of the fight. Moisés probably looking to press a bit with Ogden working a jab. Moisés maybe trying to grapple. Trey Ogden defensively sound, fighting off the takedown attempts. Moisés really doesn't pack a big punch. So I'm not too worried about Ogden in a striking fight with Moisés. I think he beats Moisés in a kickboxing match. And even though Moisés has good jiu-jitsu, not having the wrestling to get it there, Ogden more than likely does dictate where the fight takes place. The way that Ogden could find himself into trouble would be if he's pressed towards the cage and then Thiago Moisés is able to get to his back from there. But Ogden's crafty in those positions. He has pretty good cage grappling skills. He's pretty quick in defensive transitions and grappling too. I feel like Trey Ogden's a quality fighter. Good win. Incoming, I should say. Good win on the table for sure for Trey Ogden. And I'm going to pick him. I'm going underdog lock because it's UFC Vegas 101. I wanted to start the year off with a bang, and I think Trey Ogden is going to cash a nice dub for all of us. So underdog lock to get it kicking for 2025. Now, I want to jump to the next section. I want to talk my most confident picks on the card. There's 4 of them. We'll bring them up on screen. And we'll talk each and every one of them. First things first, though. Nurullo Aliev, a.k.a. Twin Khabib Nurmagomedov. Oh, my gosh. The line is minus 650. It's got wider. I'm not surprised by the spread of the line because Joe Solecki is coming in on short notice and essentially only offers a jiu-jitsu threat against a dominant wrestler, somebody with good top control. I feel like Aliev is a forgotten prospect a bit. Obviously, the bookies haven't forgot, but the fans have forgot because he didn't fight in 2024. His last win was against Rafael Alves, who got released from the UFC, but probably one of the most intense and impressive guys to get cut from the UFC in recent years. He's actually doing great work in karate combat. And even though he beat a UFC washout in his debut, probably one of the best washouts you can have a win over. And I would assume if Alves was ever re-signed, he can beat some of these, bottom end to mid-tier lightweights at worst because he's got a pretty explosive style. Granted, Aliev was caught in a guillotine in that fight, so like he has a decent guillotine. That's a big area of watchfulness for Aliev, and I'm sure the team has spotted that Joe Solecki has a pretty good gilly. Now, looking at Aliev ways to win, takedowns, control. In striking, I don't think Solecki could knock him out. I could see competitive moments, but Aliev using his striking to then engage in grappling, and Solecki probably because of the jiu-jitsu style base, being more so willing to accept bottom position. That's kind of what happened against Grant Dawson. This is definitely a step up in competition, but it's a matchup that I think is favorable to Aliev. Now, I don't think he should be minus 650. But we have to take some intangibles into play as well. With Joe Solecki coming in on short notice, it's not like Solecki had 12 weeks to prepare for Aliev either. He's jumping right in there. Doesn't even have probably the best possible conditioning either, not being training for this matchup, right? And, having the holiday recently, might have been having a good time on Christmas, maybe drinking a bit. We don't know exactly what Solecki was up to, but ultimately, I honestly can't assume he's going to be, I cannot, that optimal fight shape, right? Whereas Aliev is going to be in great shape. And he's 24, and I feel as though his improvements could be pretty vast over the past year or so, and I'm very excited to see what he brings. So Nurullo Aliev is the pick. I do think that he's going to win it by a decision. Sucks as far as odds, minus 230, over 2.5, minus 325. I'm anticipating this fight goes into the later stages. I think Aliev's wrestling is a key factor in the fight. He is an overjuiced line. There's a lot of overjuiced lines on this this card, but I like Nurullo Aliev enough so where I felt I had to include him, even though the only way you playing him is if you parlaying him. Let's keep running. Magomed Gadzhiyasulov next up. He should definitely beat Bruno Lopes. I've been relatively unimpressed with Bruno Lopes through both of his contender series fights. He was violently knocked out by Brandison Ribeiro 2 seasons ago. And then last season, he was able to pull off a win. And I don't know, though. Sazignani was the opponent. He got dropped in the first round. He looked, I don't know, kind of awkward in the pocket at moments. He really lacks head movement and mobility. Like, something about Bruno Lopes that I think is worthwhile of writing down is he's one of the slower light heavyweights. He doesn't have good foot speed nor hand speed. Has some power, can definitely break opponents by consistently pressing, and that's what he did with Sazignani. He survived the early explosiveness, but Sazignani is really not very good as far as technique goes. He's more just explosion, where Magomed Gadzhiyasulov is a crafty technician who's very patient with his striking. I'm highly confident that Magomed Gadzhiyasulov has a 30-27 win, probably on lock in this fight here. Even though his last fight, he showed some vulnerabilities against Brandison Ribeiro on the feet with his leg getting chopped apart. He then went to the wrestling using a quality fight IQ and absolutely dominated that fight on the ground. I think he could potentially take Bruno Lopes down. I don't think Lopes has the same kicking ability as Brandison Ribeiro either. Lopes has okay leg kicks, but like I said, he's not very quick. Brandison Ribeiro is a lot faster, a lot more explosive. I think Magomed Gadzhiyasulov's got a unanimous decision, probably incoming. Over 1.5 rounds is -190. I think there's a live chance for that. To be fair, though, seeing that Brandison Ribeiro violently chinned Bruno Lopes, it wouldn't be crazy if Magomed Gadzhiyasulov could find a counter shot KO. Just worthwhile of mentioning. It's +275 for Gadzhiyasulov by knockout, whereas it's only +200 for that decision win. And we do have, big 205 pounders. Lopes, a little bit slower, but likes to kind of bang in the pocket a bit and bring pressure. He could definitely be caught, even though Magomed Gadzhiyasulov at a high level has shown us very minimal punching power. His last knockout took place back in 2022 in Eagle FC, but he does have KO wins. I mean, he had a 3-fight knockout streak spanning from 2021 to 2022. You can even dig back to his early run. Actually, his first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pro fights. His first 6 pro fights he finished. And then it's been decisions galore as of late. And he's also been a huge favorite in pretty much all of his fights as of late. Of all the matchups that he has been listed in, he's actually the smallest favorite in this one. Like, the matchups with odds available that are listed, smallest favorite. So interesting that a lot of respect on the side of the Brazilian Bruno Lopes. I'm just not feeling Bruno's chances. I think Magomed Gadzhiyasulov is good to go. I see him getting his hand raised. I think he's a craftier fighter. I think he's probably better overall, and I think W's incoming. Next up, Cesar Almeida. Come on. He's got to beat the 39-year-old Abdulrazak Alhassan. Come on, right? It has to happen. He has to beat the aging Abdulrazak Alhassan. Cesar Almeida is a talented kickboxer. I feel like he's finding his flow in MMA. He went the distance against Roman Kopylov. What lost him that fight, granted he was dropped in the first round, but what also lost him that fight is the takedown threats from Roman Kopylov. He was able to hit a good amount of takedowns. Cesar Almeida's takedown defense looked very spotty in that fight. But Abdulrazak Alhassan doesn't have the same craftiness of entries to get in on takedowns. Even though he has a judo base, I consider Abdulrazak Alhassan definitely more of a knockout puncher, striker style. And I think Cesar Almeida can outstrike Abdulrazak and probably find the KO at some point. Now, he's a -250 favorite. I would ultimately say the money line is where the highest level of confidence does lie. But when I look at knockout, it's not crazy if Almeida can find it here. It's just the odds coming back to us are not super worthwhile. Only +130 for the KO win for Almeida, which doesn't make me jump out of my chair with excitement like, yo, go out and bet that. I think he wins the fight. I think he probably outstrikes Abdul Razak Alhassan. I think he probably finds some clean counter shots, which could lead to a KO. Abdul Razak Alhassan's also shorter than him. This is the first time in a while that there's, a little bit more of a range advantage for Cesar Almeida, with Abdul Razak Alhassan being a former welterweight. I think this is better for Cesar, and I do think he has a chance to pull off a highlight reel KO that would build his stock back up, because he came into the UFC with that kickboxing base, a bit of hype, has had, subpar performances in certain matchups. I guess, was it subpar? Yeah, to be fair, you have to say that all of his UFC fights, he's fought subpar performances. I know the Roman Kopylov fight was a split decision, but it was no split decision. He had striking moments, but he got wrestle fucked in that fight. But it wasn't super impressive with Dylan Budka, but you can't really blame Almeida. Budka with just a pressure wrestling style trying to hold. And then with Potieria, it was an awkward fight, a little too close for comfort though, but obviously he handled Potieria. I'm going to say Cesar Almeida takes it home. We're going with him. He's going to be a nice, confident pick at minus 250. I think he takes out Abdul Razak Alhassan. Now, next up is going to be an over 4.5 in the main event at minus 210. I think there's a good chance that Dern and Ribas entangle in a competitive back and forth fight. But women's MMA, both girls, we've seen them go long numerous times. Ribas went 5 rounds in her last fight. I feel like we're looking at 5 rounds of competitive work. Neither one of them is a great knockout artist. Both have good jiu-jitsu, but neither really has like a serious advantage where a finish seems likely. So over 4.5, I think makes a ton of sense. And I really like that as a high confidence pick. So those right there are going to be the first most confident picks of 2025. We got the chalky and oversized favorite in Nurullo Aliev. We got Magomed Gadzhiyasulov, the Dagestan savage training out of Bahrain. We got Cesar Almeida, who I think is, on his way to getting a nice striking display win. And then the Dern and Ribas over. I'm loving the calls. Those right there are going to be this week's most confident picks. I'm feeling good about them. And I like the lock as a dog too. I'm excited to talk parlays, but we got more sections first. We got to talk about my favorite underdogs. Now, I may have locked an underdog, but there's multiple dogs on this card. Chris Curtis, plus 211. I think he can beat Roman Kopylov in a competitive fight. I don't see Kopylov knocking him out. I don't really see Curtis sleeping Kopylov either. I think that's unlikely. But I do think Chris Curtis with heavy hands could bust Kopylov up and steal 2 out of the 3 rounds. I see it as a close fight. I'm looking at Kopylov getting touched a bit by Cesar Almeida. Now, I know Chris Curtis on paper doesn't have the same level of striking accolades, but what I do know about Chris Curtis is he's got good MMA boxing. He's got power in his hands. He went tooth and nail last time with Brendan Allen, who's a top contender. And to be real, if he doesn't tear his hamstring at the end of the fight, very live to win it. I picked Chris Curtis in that fight. I won't lie. I'm a Chris Curtis believer at this point. And I think Kopylov is good, but when you look at competition level, it's been higher for the side of Chris Curtis. And I do think that he can put it on Roman Kopylov in a competitive match, especially if he can get to that yellow and red zone, the mid and the close range. He's got to close the gap from distance, green zone, long range, whatever you want to call it. Roman Kopylov has a substantial advantage. He's better at straight shots from range, and he's definitely a better kicker. If he can slip, slide, and move all night and counter shot Chris Curtis, yes, Curtis is in trouble to just get out kickboxed and frustrated for 3 rounds. But I do think Curtis is going to be able to close that gap. I like that both of these guys are southpaws. I like the way Chris Curtis closes distance with his boxing. In this matchup, I'm seeing Chris Curtis with a chance to surprise a lot of people. I feel in some senses is being completely written off because Roman Kopylov is a massive favorite. Minus 250 does not make sense to me. Roman Kopylov at minus 175, even minus 125. That's a sensible line. At open, the odds had Roman Kopylov still as wide as minus 180. I don't see it as this much of a disparity in skill. I see the gap a lot closer. I see it more of a 50-50 fight. I see it as a fight that Chris Curtis lands a couple of big punches. He's stealing rounds and winning. I'm going to say Chris Curtis gets a close decision, 29-28. Don't be shocked if it's split decision, but I see him getting his hand raised, and I want to talk a little bit more about the props for this fight here. I'll give you a hint in the Degen prop section. But the next dog that we're going to bring up, Nicole Caliari. I'm going to call her the sweaty dog, but let me tell you why I like her, because she's a relentless Brazilian pressure-based grappler, and she's taken on a girl that is primarily a striker without much knockout power. Kareckaite has been given the nickname heavy-handed, but I swear that has to be from something that happened in the gym, because inside of the cage, we have not seen her show heavy hands. We've seen her as a volume puncher, so the heavy-handed nickname is just plain wrong. I know that Caliari can close distance, right? Be a little bit reckless and wild, right? Get this fight to the ground and lock up a submission, right? I think so. I'm saying right 3 times because third time's a charm. I think that Nicole Caliari with a grappling edge is very live to do good work in this matchup. Now, Ernesto Kareckaite striking from range is definitely a dangerous skill set. And if Nicole Caliari is unable to close the gap on her, right, she's stuck kickboxing for 3 rounds, she will get picked apart and lose a decision. But I think her wildness to her striking style will serve her right, because in certain matchups, the best way to make a technician uncomfortable, right, and throw their game off and give them trouble in striking is to be a bit unorthodox, a bit chaotic, throw things that are unexpected. As I'm about to knock over a damn cup, I'm getting so excited. Nicole Caliari, I think she's got the chaos factor to give Kareckaite trouble. Now, she's given up a lot of height and reach. I know it's going to be hard for her to close that gap, but if she can, she's going to have a big, big advantage when they go to the ground. She's going to be stronger. She's going to be better at jiu-jitsu. Now, if you think Caliari by submission is live, you got a plus 550 line, but still quality just down the center at plus 220 as a dog. Fun battle between these ladies here. I'm actually really looking forward to the fight. Caliari's got tricky jiu-jitsu. She can sub you from the top or bottom, dangerous arm bars, and Caliari on the ground is going to be live to get a finish at any point, whereas though Kareckaite is a quality striker, finishing ability and striking on the lower side. She's not a finisher. Those are 2 of my favorite dogs. I want to keep running. I want to jump to the next section. I'm getting excited about it already. Degen Props. You thought I was going to the parlays? Not yet. Give me a second. Ponzinibbio to knock out Carlston Harris, plus 250. Carlston Harris looks like a 60-year-old journeyman boxer at this point. He could get caught by Ponzi early and slept. Curtis Kopylov. I told you I would mention the Chris Curtis fight. Over 2.5 rounds, minus 210. I'm thinking we're probably going long. Curtis by decision, plus 500. I like the chances of that too. Now, this is an absolute Degen call. It's actually not even a pick. This is just a Degen prop, because if Ihor Potieria wins, he's probably KOing Marco Tulio, botching his name. I can say all these Dagestan names, Chechens, Tajik names, fighters from Afghanistan, but somehow I'm botching the Brazilian name. I think that Potieria is alive for a later stoppage and a counter shot KO. He's going to be a bit taller than Tulio, and he's got quick hands, though he's not super technical. The KO's plus 800. It's not an official pick, but it's a prop worth mentioning. Fatima Kline to win by submission in the second round, plus 1,000, or third round, plus 1,200. I like Kline with a late stage submission against Dudakova, and you have zero value doing any money line or really anything else there. And then Austin Bashi by sub. If the young Savage can pull off a submission over C-Rod, that's a crazy way to start his UFC career. At featherweight, C-Rod has not been as dominant. He's been controlled on the ground in the past. Austin Bashi seems like a true smothering technician of grappling skill, and he does have a striking base as well. I'm going to say the sub is live. It's plus 450. The odds are wide for it to happen for a reason, but I do think C-Rod could be subbed up, and I felt it's worth mentioning. So very large line on that Degen call, plus 450. Those are the Degen props. I know you guys have all been waiting. We want to talk about the parlays, so let's just bring them up on screen. We're doing parlays for UFC Vegas 101. What am I cooking up? All right. So at the top, you see Lock City. Aliev and Gadzhiyasulov both have great chances to win. And I felt that was a due name for it at minus 139. I like the chances of this parlay hitting. Now, if you don't want to play Gadzhiyasulov, I don't know, maybe for some reason you don't like him, you have minus 154 for Almeida and Aliev. Odds are not as good. And again, you're not getting plus just yet, but better than playing 3-1 odds. Now, keep on running down. You got the prospects called. If the prospects come through, Aliev, Gadzhiyasulov, and Jacobe Smith, plus 111. Jacobe Smith, I think he is going to win. He's not in the most confident pick section because he's making a short notice debut, but he is a quality fighter. The odds, though, for him, way too wide. He's currently money lined at minus 550 against Preston Parsons, which I think that's kind of crazy. But I do think it's a live prospects play. Next up, safe call, Aliev, Gadzhiyasulov, and Almeida. I think those three are coming through. I feel like that's pretty safe for a three-fighter play. Now, if you're looking to run the most confident picks all in one, you put them all together, Aliev, Gadzhiyasulov, Almeida, and the Dern versus Ribas over 4.5. You got plus 249 for that most confident pick savagery. Clean sweep on it. Listen, if you're watching and you about to just screenshot and bail, or if you already screenshotted and bail, shame on you. But if you're here, I just want to say you're a savage, and you should put in the comments hashtag free Pitbull, because Patricio Pitbull, I'm saying a news story right now because I had to get it out to the people because I know they're tuning in. He is being held in a contractual hostage by PFL, and it deserves more notoriety in the MMA space. So hashtag free Pitbull if you're watching this. Next up, let's keep going down. Dog lock call. Trey Ogden versus Gadzhiyasulov at plus 276. I like the chances for Trey Ogden and Gadzhiyasulov. I love the chances, actually, for them to come through because it's a confident pick that's a favorite, and I think it's a quality underdog, my dog lock with Ogden. Plus 276 for those two. Now, if you want to go savage mode, you got Ogden, Gadzhiyasulov, and the Curtis Kopylov over 2.5, plus 454. I do think that's savage. Now, you add a little more savage. You know what you're doing? You're adding Dern and Ribas is over 4.5 rounds to it. Now you're at plus 712. Now you're in the more savage zone. This is close to Degen. Ogden, Aliev, Gadzhiyasulov, Almeida, the Dern and Ribas over 4.5 is 8-1. That's a plus 808. I like the plus 808. Seems like some lucky numbers put together. Now we keep on going down. Ogden, Gadzhiyasulov, Curtis Kopylov over 2.5, Dern Ribas over 4.5, and Almeida plus 1,027. This is Degen. This is live Degen, though. This is not a crazy outcome. This seems very viable and even likely to happen. Now, if you want to go savage Degen with it, then you add Aliev as well. First fighter of the night, walking out in fight number 1, plus 1240 for that savage Degen call. And I had to drop you guys some things wider. I like the savage Degen. That's, animalistic. And I love everything up to, these last 3 more so, because Degen prop is ultimately the highest risk of parlays you can do. You're throwing a high risk bet of a prop in with fights to come through. But, I do think possible. Bashi by sub, Ogden, Aliev, and Gadzhiyasulov, plus 2,578 for the Degen prop call. Now, for the savage Degen prop, Bashi sub, Ogden, Aliev, Gadzhiyasulov, and the over 2.5 Kopylov Curtis, plus 3,854. Now, if you want to go savage Degen AF, you add in Dern and Ribas over 4.5 for plus 5,693. Starting 2025 off with some savage parlays for you guys. I hope you all enjoyed the first episode of the year. I enjoyed it. UFC Vegas 101. I cannot wait to watch UFC fights. I will be live for the whole card. Make sure you watch the Fight Companion. As I mentioned in the last segment, the Pitbull situation with PFL, I did a video on it. It's a cult banger. I will call it one because obviously it's PFL. The traction compared to UFC content doesn't get that same algorithmic push. But if you're interested in it, I'm going to link it in the description because I think it's a worthwhile watch just to see what the injustices happening outside of the UFC look like, especially for an OG legend like Patricio Pitbull. It's unfortunate mention it. You can see I'm upset about it. I'm talking in the damn This Week's Best MMA Bets episode. But I do hope you guys enjoyed. Smash the like button. If you guys are new, subscribe it up. W's in the comments if you got nothing to say. And make sure you turn the post notifications on. I'm doing videos and live streams every day. So keep it locked in on the channel. Much love, my people. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.